Hey everybody, and welcome to the Disney Q&A. This is the series in which you guys throw all sorts of Disney questions my way, whether it's about the history or the parks, mostly the parks, the movies. I try to answer them to the best of my ability, and today we have a good group of questions, so I'm just going to dive right in. Our first question comes from Drummer Master, who asks, what are your thoughts on this being the final year of the Osborne Lights? Do you think they should move them to a different park? Also, if you could add one store to Disney Springs, what store would you add? Unfortunately, the Osborne Christmas Lights, which if you've never been there before, it's this fantastic Christmas light show that they put on the streets of America in Hollywood Studios. It's run for its last time as they're sort of preparing to redo that whole area of the park for construction for Star Wars Land and Toy Story Land. As for what are my thoughts on it? I mean, I think I'm pretty outspokenly in favor of change when it comes to any of the parks. I don't think there's anything too sacred that it can't be removed. And, the Osborne Lights have run for 2 decades now. So it's not even like it's something that popped up and was really good and they're just sort of ending it in its prime. It had a pretty good run. It was a good tradition. I think there's a good reason behind why they need to remove it. It's not like they're closing it for a budget reason or because, of a controversy. It's mainly because they're trying to rebuild these parts of the parks into something new and exciting. And unfortunately, when you do that, sometimes things have to go. As for should they move it to a different park, I don't think they should. I kind of like that it was its thing and it's had its run and it's sort of moved on. And, it's a sort of memory that people will have with them. I think the specialness of something goes away if you just try and keep it alive as long as possible and you move it from park to park. So I'm sort of okay with it not coming back in another form. Who knows, maybe when it's, all said and done and these new parts of the parks are open, they'll have some form of it return, to that part of the park. That might be too far in the future to imagine. As for your second question, it's funny. I've only recently been to Disney Springs and we didn't really get to see all of Disney Springs, so I'm not fully sure of what's there already. When I go to downtown Disney to shop, it's for Disney stuff, right? So it's some sort of Disney store I would want to see there. And they already have the Disney store, I believe. And they have other kiosks with pins and, Disney clothes. So, it's tough because I guess I would like to see a bigger store dedicated to contemporary Disney art. I know they already have a store there that I actually went through and there was some pretty cool stuff with a lot of Disney art, Disney park art. But I would love to see some more of that. Maybe a store dedicated to retro Disney, right? A whole line of clothing and art and stuff like that, just as to the old school Disney, I think would be cool. Because I think that's a cool way to bring things back. A lot of people talk about, would you bring back this ride or would you bring back this show? And my answer 99% of the time is no, I wouldn't, because it had its run. I love Horizons, but it's gone, and I don't think it should come back. But maybe Horizons t-shirts, Horizons art to hang on your wall, stuff for Horizon fans to buy, I think would be a cool alternative. So maybe something like that, some retro Disney store would be fun. Our next question comes from Bfish Alex Imagineering, who asks, regarding the general rising popularity of the Disney parks, I've heard about many of the parks reaching capacity even a few weeks before the usual Christmas rush. What do you think this shows about the future of the parks, and do you think this trend will continue? How do you think Disney should respond? I think it's funny in the way that you've worded the question, right? Because, yes, I've heard that too. And from my experience, I went in September, which was historically a slower season, and it was packed. I think that speaks well to the parks. Obviously, more business for the parks is a good thing. It means the attractions world isn't shrinking or on a decline. And so I think that can only mean good things. Obviously, it presents new challenges for Disney, right? Because they have to figure out ways to alleviate this swelling. But I just found it interesting that you said, how should Disney respond? Because I almost think the increase in crowds is people responding to Disney. You have to understand, Disney saw this decline during certain points of the years, and that's when you started to see free dining or these crazy deals on hotels and packages, and that was Disney trying to get more people to come to the park. So really, it's the other way around. Disney doesn't really need to respond so much as we're the ones responding to Disney. That said, obviously they need to keep a balance, and I think we're seeing that as well. And it's not always a great topic to touch upon, but I think it's in the form of higher ticket prices. If you raise the prices because there's higher demand and there's a limited supply, in this case in space and time, then you'll see it even out. And so as people, who don't think it's worth it, don't pay the price. It's not as fun of an answer as adding another park, but who knows, maybe that's another thing they do down the line, although I'm sort of not in the boat of them adding another park as much as improving the parks that are already there, but it's totally a possibility. But I just found it interesting because to me, it's the other way around. It's Disney they took the first act by putting out free dining and all these plans, and we're the ones responding. Our next question comes from Denbro710, who asks, I was just thinking about it, and other than Fantasia, I don't think there's a major motion picture with Mickey Mouse and friends as the stars. Do you think there will ever be a movie about Mickey? That's a good point, and I was looking into it, and it's really tough because all of the Mickey filmographies sort of cover all the shorts and TV shows. But you're right, I can't think of a movie that came out in theaters in which Mickey wasn't like a cameo, but like the star. And to answer your question, I honestly don't think they'll do it. I just don't. I think it's weird. I think Mickey is a very interesting subject when it comes to the idea of iconography for children and for families growing up, and that everybody knows Mickey Mouse and everybody has memories of Mickey Mouse, yet like you've pointed out, they don't go to the movies to see Mickey Mouse, and I don't think Disney has any need for them to start doing that. I think they've got Marvel and they've got Star Wars and they've got Frozen and they've got Pixar, Zootopia. They've got all of these things to draw people to film. I think part of it's also maybe playing it safe. Mickey's their main man. Mickey is the mascot of the Disney company. And if you put out a movie starring Mickey and it's a bad movie, what does that say to the company? Now, in reality, probably not much, because it's just a movie and some movies are bad and that's just the way things turn out. But, I think perception might be that, oh, look, this awful Mickey movie comes out and, maybe that means Disney's awful. And I think the combination of they don't financially need to push Mickey into the spotlight on when it comes to film, combined with the risk of if they do and it doesn't work out, means you probably won't see Mickey on the big screen anytime soon. And you know what, to be honest, I'm perfectly fine with that. And that's because I'm a massive, massive fan of the new Mickey Mouse cartoons that have been out. And I think you could see them on the Disney Channel. I know they're on the website. You can see them at the hotels. I watch them on iTunes. You can pick up the seasons for $3. They're super cheap. And that's how I actually like Mickey as a character and all of his friends, in that they're shorter episodes. I think that's great, and I think that's where it works best, because when I think to those videos, I will watch as many of them as they'll put out. But if you ask me to sit there and watch 90 to 100 minutes of Mickey, I don't know if I'd be able to sit through that. So I don't think it has that same universal appeal. It would be purely a children's show at that, or children's movie at that point. Our next question comes from Mario Luigi, I guess of the Luigi family? And Mario Luigi asks, do you think with the release of the new Jungle Book movie, Disney will theme the Jungle Cruise around the Jungle Book once a year, kind of like the Haunted Mansion with The Nightmare Before Christmas during the Christmas season in Disneyland? That's an interesting way to put it, because I think that's an idea that's crossed multiple people's minds. It's certainly crossed mine, although not in that form. I never thought of it as a seasonal thing. I thought maybe if this movie does really well, you might just see, I don't see why they wouldn't just retheme the Jungle Cruise completely to be Jungle Book related. Although I'm not entirely sure how you would do that in a way that sort of fits the tone of the film. Granted, the movie's not out yet, and who knows, the tone of the film might wildly change, but from the trailers, it seems like an exciting, adventure epic film. And the Jungle Cruise is not exciting, it is not epic, it is not grand in any way, and I don't think adding a couple of animatronics or music would really make it so. Now that I'm thinking about it, it might not make for a good Jungle Book ride, but yeah, maybe like a seasonal theming. Although I think the seasonal theming, with Haunted Mansion and Nightmare Before Christmas, it makes sense because they do it in the Christmas season, and it's a movie about Christmas, right? Jungle Book, unless they change the plot in some way, I don't think it's a movie about a holiday, so I don't know when they would do that. But I think it raises a good point, which is, and it's something I've always thought of, which is if these movies, these modern remakes or reboots of classic films do really well, I think that's the best way you can see representation of these classics come back to the parks. Without this movie, I'd say there's a 0% chance you're going to see anything Jungle Book related in the Disney parks, being added. But with this movie, it's a possibility now. So, the next time they announce a reboot of a classic Disney and you groan and roll your eyes, just think, maybe this is the best way to get the movie back into the parks. Coming to mind, Beauty and the Beast, right? Maybe we see more Beauty and the Beast once the movie comes out, the live action, or, So I think that's a good pairing, and I guess we'll see. But, I'll never say never, right? Our next question comes from Gabe Lazatin, I hope I'm saying that correctly, who asks, what is your favorite Disney park ad? And that includes, I guess, the promotional videos. And there's those hour-long planning your Disney vacation videos that I think we all got on VHS at some point, or DVD, depending on how old you are. And those are good to pump you up and get you ready for Disney. But honestly, my favorite Disney parks ad campaign was the Let the Memories Begin campaign that they ran, I want to say in the late 2010s, early, I don't know, around there, 2008, 2009-ish. And it's because I think they did everything perfectly. They nailed exactly what you need to do when you're advertising for a Disney park. Look, Disney's a great place to go, but I don't think there's any commercial that's going to sell it on somebody who's never been before. I think the trick is that you need to point your campaigns at people who have gone and get them to come back. And the best way to do that is to appeal to emotion, appeal to memories. And that campaign was all about that. It had really nice music. It was this lighthearted, music that played. And they used, as far as I can tell, real home movie videos from families visiting. And the whole point of the campaign was let the memories begin. This is where you go to create memories. And I think that's what people really think about fondly when they think back on Disney trips. And so to me, that was perfect. And it was also very short. They were 15, 30-second ad spots. They didn't drag on too long. And so that, to me, was the best ad campaign that Disney has ever put out for their parks. And I think they work perfectly. And when I see an ad like that, it certainly makes me want to go back. Our next question comes from Mario Diddy04, who asks, hey Rob, I noticed that you hardly ever touch upon the water parks at Disney World. Have you ever been to them? Which water park do you think has the best theming, and what would you do to improve the other one? So I don't talk about them too much. I think part of it's because, one, I don't think a lot of people ask about them, for Q&As. I just answer what people ask me. But as far as history goes, I don't know if they have as rich of a history as the parks, which is why I usually don't touch upon them. I have been to both of them, Blizzard Beach and Typhoon Lagoon. I haven't been to the older ones before they closed. I like them. I enjoy them. You know what it is? I'm not a big water park person. When I go down for the trips, I plan for the parks. I plan for eating and restaurants. Rarely do I set aside a day to go to a water park. And I guess to me, and maybe it's because I'm getting older, but the idea of a fun day in a pool is just lounging by the hotel pool, not so much water slides and wave pools and stuff like that. That said, I definitely am more of a fan of Typhoon Lagoon than Blizzard Beach. I think they both have fantastic theming. I actually wouldn't change either. I love the idea of Blizzard Beach. I think maybe because I come from New York and we could have some pretty bad winters up here. The idea of reminding me of the cold in any extent while I'm trying to be on vacation is not fun to me. So I try to lean towards Typhoon Lagoon, where it's nice and more tropical and it plays like the Beach Boys, and that's the more, the music I lean towards for that. So I'm a big fan of Typhoon Lagoon. And I kind of like the backstory to it, the idea that it ties into the backstory of Pleasure Island. And, not to say that Blizzard Beach doesn't have one, but I don't know, I just like it more. Yeah. Anything to avoid the cold, basically. But I wouldn't change Blizzard Beach. I think that's a very unique way to go about it. Though I did do a Revisiting Disney episode on the water parks, in which I had the idea of sort of redoing one of the parks to be Indiana Jones themed, to make it more jungle-esque with traps and old temples and stuff like that. I think that could be a lot of fun. And then our final question this week comes from The Pickled Orange, who asks, have you used the dining plan? What do you think of it? Also, since Disney announced they were doing away with Star Wars weekends, do you think that this will open up the opportunity to have some of the guests that visited during those weekends and also some of the past events appear in Star Wars Land during other times of the year? So to answer your first question, yes, I used the dining plan once. I didn't pay for it. It was when they were doing the free dining deals in the off season. I think the dining plan, like a lot of the extras that they add at Disney World, are applicable to certain families and to certain circumstances. I went with one other friend and it was just the two of us, and so the dining plan ended up being too much. Like, I'm glad we didn't pay for it because it was just too much food. It's weird to almost say that, but it's just, you know, you get the meal and you get a snack, and for us, where we eat for fuel and then we go to the parks, it was just, we always had leftovers. And so I wouldn't use it again. But like when you're with a big family and the idea of having to keep track of and plan all of your meals and who's paying what, and like that's when the Disney plan could really come in handy. And obviously financially it seems to do well for Disney because it's still around and still a thing they offer. So I definitely think there are use cases where it's the good thing to use. I just think for my personal trips that I take, I usually don't have a need to. On to your second part of the question, Star Wars Weekends is no longer around, and obviously it makes sense because they're adding Star Wars lands, but I think there's actually more to it than that, and they haven't announced this, so everything I'm saying here is not, you know, official as much as it's me sort of speculating, and that is that Star Wars is now a much more valuable property to Disney, right? Back when they were doing Star Wars Weekends, they didn't own it. It was just a partnership they had with Lucasfilm, and so it probably didn't matter too much to them. The idea of Chewbacca or Han Solo dancing on stage during the dance-offs, you know, they were really fun, but they had no reason to care about how that put across the image of those characters because it wasn't their characters. Now they have characters. Not only do they own the characters, but they're kicking off the franchise again. You know, they brought back Han Solo, they brought back Leia, and, you know, all these characters are coming back. And so I can see Disney being a lot more careful with how they portray their characters because it's theirs now. And so I think that partially went into why they did away with Star Wars Weekends. You know, maybe they're not 100% sure how they want to position it. You know, in the old Star Wars Weekends, you could go get your photo taken with Anakin, and Disney, as far as I can tell, is trying to avoid the prequels as much as possible now that they own the franchise. So, like, you know, I think those choices go into it. That said, I think it'll be interesting. I don't know. Like, it was weird. It was strange to begin with that they made sort of a holiday, an annual holiday out of Star Wars every summer. And now that they own Star Wars, I don't see why they wouldn't do that. But if they're going to have a whole land to themselves across two parks, they also might not feel the need for it. You know, think about the Jedi Academy. If I recall, that was never really a permanent installation until later on. So what you might see is, yeah, maybe the dance-offs that they do, the hyperspace hoopla, becomes more of a regular show, right? And then it doesn't become a Star Wars Weekends thing. It just becomes a, hey, that's in Star Wars Land thing. Or guests visiting. Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think you can see that more likely being a thing that happens because now they're working closely with these celebrities who are working on the films, Daisy Ridley and John Boyega, because they own the company and they own the property. And now those are actors working with Disney as opposed to working with Lucas, who works with Disney, and then you have to just, you know, convince them to come over. So yeah, I'm really excited to see the future of what Disney does with the parks when it comes to Star Wars, not just with Star Wars Land, but just events and things like that. Anyway, I want to thank you all for the fantastic questions. They were really 100% awesome this week. If you have a question that you would like me to answer, all you have to do is leave it in the comments below, or you can leave it on Twitter. I'm at RobPlays. I want to thank you all for watching. Whatever you're doing this week, make the most of it because it makes it that much better. And my question for you guys this week is, what is your favorite Disney water park? Is it Blizzard Beach? Is it Typhoon Lagoon? And why is it Typhoon Lagoon? See y'all next time. Bye.